welcome all you friends, neighbors, citizens of the world. We're here in Chicago with another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James. I'm with Katy Hogan. We also call it Heartland at Home because we are in the time of the pandemic. This is number 83 since the pandemic began. And we have what we'd like to think is going to be a really wonderful show for you. We've got our old friend, a longtime civil rights activist, the feminist, Heather Booth, and we'll be joined a little later by Aaron Hughes. We first met Aaron when he was in the Iraq Veterans Against the War, and he was on our show, and he's going to clue us into not only an exhibit coming up at DePaul, but an event that happens at 11 o'clock this morning called Reparations Now and Onward, Voices of Survivors, Advocates, and Next Steps. How are you, Katy?
Okay, glad to have you back, Michael.
Yeah, I had a little stint in the hospital. Everything is working out. Details to come. But I'm glad to be back. Although it's pretty cold up in.
It is very cold. It is. Today was, I think I heard someone say the high today is 2. The current temperature is 2. Or was that last night? I don't know. It was funny.
It's a little warmer than that. Although I know my washing machine is frozen up.
Uh-oh.
I had a system to drain it so it wouldn't happen, but I didn't do it. So we'll see. Hopefully no broken pipes.
Really? So good things over the holidays. Anything you want to share? I'm reading Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead. It's a book group book. And I baked more banana bread. I'm hoping it's not as dense as you found the last loaf, Michael. But
I
you're the one to tell us.
The family ate some of your banana bread, but I got most of it. It was good. I got a couple of books for Christmas. Usually I get photo books, but I got some novels to read. I've always enjoyed reading James Lee Burke, the Detective Rubershow novels. He has a new book out. It's a different family. I think I'm not sure what the name of the family is, but it's called Another Kind of Eden. And it's a page burner. But as in his last book and this, he gets a little not spiritual, like a little science fiction-y. I'm not happy with the ending, but it certainly kept me going for well over a day. And I really enjoyed it until the last page. And I'm also got a book called Harsh Times, which is by Mario Vargas Llosa. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but this book is really opening up a lot of stuff. It's a novel, but it's a historical novel, and it talks a lot about Guatemala and the CIA's involvement with United Fruit in overthrowing the Arbenz government under the guise of dealing with communism coming to the Western Hemisphere.
Oh, really terrible history. Really terrible piece of our history. What we started there has been responsible for so much suffering in that country and the countries on either side of it. It's really terrible. Anyway, that was the good news, right? I forgot. We were talking good news.
Well, yeah, it's pretty good. Things are mixed, good and bad. They all go together. On the global front, though, there's some really serious stuff happening in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is an Asian country. It's resource rich, 19 million people. And a protest erupted there in the last week over fuel prices. There's a certain kind of fuel used by poorer people, and there was a cap on the price of it. And that got lifted by the government, and that opened things up. It's expanded to not only that issue, but all kind of issues. And a coalition of an alliance of Soviet troops have been called in. There are 2,500 troops. They've cleared the airport, 4,000 people detained, many killed, including 18 police. It's brutal. And I'm not sure how Russia handles this uprising and then keeps all their troops on the Ukrainian border. There's a lot to watch over there on that side of the globe.
Sounds pretty terrible. We normally cover a lot of things at this point to do with voter suppression and vote protection. We're going to do that with our guest, Heather Booth, this morning, and which we will join her very shortly. Just briefly, COVID wise, we're still on the flipping roller coaster. If you were a CPS parent, you're just probably at this point banging your head against the wall. And we've got the pop-up testing market all around us. In every seemingly empty storefront, you can now get tested for COVID with varying levels of okayness. Okay. It's not okay for people to, for example, charge you for a free COVID test. I was charged the other day for one that, anyway, there's now a page to check on these places, but try and get the governor actually pointed out that there are a lot of pop-ups that are really bogus. They don't even give you results. They just take your money. That's what I'm saying.
There's got to be some system to regulate this.
Yeah.
On another front on this, the Supreme Court, while we're recording here on Friday, is actually reviewing President Biden's vaccine rules for private businesses and healthcare workers. That mandate has been upheld by 2 lower courts. Of course, it's being challenged by a number of Republican states, and we shall see. I hope the mandate stays in place. I did see Kamala Harris last night on Judy Woodruff and PBS. She was asked about changes in the virus approach by the Biden administration, since I think there were 6 of 11 former people on his COVID panel who are calling not just for suppressing it, but learning to live with it, suppressing in certain hotspots. And of course, as she pointed out over and over last night, sticking to the distancing, the masks, the testing, those things that we've been doing. So the COVID thing is hitting us heavy, and we're in the thick of it.
So, Michael, I think we're going to go and find Heather soon. So let's save the labor report for after Heather. How's that?
I'm fine with that, Kate. It'll give me more time to make sure I present it correctly.
But we will mention that Bobby Rush announced his intention to retire, and I'm just hoping that he succeeds in getting Bronzeville its landmark status before he leaves out of there. We do have our guest in the waiting room, so we're going to take a slight station break. We go back a long way with one another, and you've now been a DC native for how many years has it been?
Over 35 years.
A long time. Okay.
Since Mayor Washington.
Right. So
who's, by the way, his 100th anniversary is coming up April 14th. And it may be something, I'm sure you'll be promoting that.
Yes. Yes, I hope we will. So you are in the thick of it. And what did the anniversary, this week's anniversary, which we just went through on Thursday, and the marking of it and the ways it was marked, how did you observe the way it was observed? What did it mean to you to see that?
By the way, as I say what this January 6th commemoration meant to me, I want to first say what you, Katy and Michael, mean to me. Oh. You have both been such champions of the movement. You are long distance movement runners. And I remember Michael back from Join Days, Jobs or Income Now. It's still a good cry. Organizing with Rising Up Angry, organizing in Uptown. And Katy, I feel we've been running partners, and during the Mayor Washington campaign, when you ran the North Side effort, and I was working with the wonderful Jackie Grimshaw downtown.
And she ran both of us.
Anyway, great to be your movement partners. And for all of those listening in, this is a movement moment. You are movement makers. And this particular moment, and it's sort of captured on January 6th, but it's particularly, I feel we're on a knife's edge. On the one hand, we have greater movement potential, greater beauty of this incredible movement than maybe any other time in my life. There are more kinds of people active, the what now called intersectionality, the connection between different parts of the movement, between Black Lives Matter, the Fight for 15, the Dreamers, every community is fighting and moving forward and realizing that we are together, fighting for each other and not just at each other. So there's a beauty that also we won this last election, won the presidency, won the Senate, won the House, even by very small margins. I mention it because part of the knife's edge is that many people also feel very dispirited and feel like it's gone on too long. There's COVID. I've got COVID right now, not infecting anyone because I'm on Zoom, but that it's wearying. And we've been in isolation and we've been fighting for so long and we're up against odds and the opposition keeps coming at us and they're lying and there's disinformation and they're stealing elections and they're trying to overthrow a government. And 1/3 of the population thinks it's okay to have violence to overthrow a government. And that the challenges are so great. So I do feel we're on a knife's edge, and January 6th, the commemoration of the day when the far right wing, the MAGA faction, I often call them, came after what remains of democracy itself, and came after our lives. And so it's a time of real threat and opportunity, but people should take heart because we do have a beautiful movement that has been successful in the past and can be successful in the future.
Well, I knew that you would stir us up, Heather, and of course you do. Describing it as a knife's edge is, I think, pretty accurate. When I watched what I did watch and listened, on the commemoration, it seemed to me like a lot of people were saying we're speaking directly to the seriousness of it and trying to ring that through. The group of folks that did something outside the Capitol overnight, that was a setup thing. That was pretty fiery as well. I guess I loved, my favorite part of the president's speech was, everybody's favorite part, I guess, when he said he's not just an ex-president. He's a defeated ex-president. I love that. And people are going to make that into lawn signs. I saw it already on social media that people say, I need that on a lawn sign. How did you respond to, say, the president's speech or maybe any other talking or coverage that you did catch between Thursday and now?
First of all, there were, that is a great quote. Even among the opening comments he had, there's one, for the first time in our history, a president has not just lost an election, he tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power as a violent mob breached the Capitol, but they failed. They failed. And on this day of remembrance, we must make sure that such an attack never, never happens again. And also saying that we must make sure it's up to us. Also, there were over 300 demonstrations around the country. Yes. So this was happening in small towns, in big cities, in rural places, with all kinds of people. And I saw some of the pictures from those demonstrations, and they really were beautiful. So there were people saying, we need to remember, never forget, but then use it to drive forward and inspire us to further action so that we never let this happen again.
I was very uplifted by it all, because I was afraid I was the only one thinking that this was a serious, awful thing. And yet I heard echoed back at me what I feel, and that January 6th should remain in our minds, just the way many other dates remain in our mind. November
Pearl Harbor,
22nd,
9/11.
December 7th, 9/11, January
The
6th.
Reichstag fire in Germany that
Exactly.
led to the rise of Hitler. We should remember Hitler came to power through a democratic election,
Yep.
but he then dismantled the elements of democracy,
Right.
followed up by brutal force and disinformation and lies. And it's the same kind of playbook we're seeing now.
So let's talk about a little bit about what else goes on in DC right now. we're a little
we talk about
we're a little concerned that, you know, that event inside of Congress had only 2 Republicans in attendance. And oh, by the way, I was actually moved that Dick Cheney came and took care of his daughter out there all by herself. I mean, what do you think about? Did you see that, Michael?
I saw it, but I got to tell you, as much as I liked it, I just can remember too many bad things.
All right. We, of course, we all know that Cheney was the evil incarnate, but I'm telling you, I mean, she's been so strong and so steady. I liked seeing that her dad brought her into the Senate.
It's nice to see that there's some people who aren't just bought and paid for by the far right wing, or intimidated by the threats and you know,
that's what I can't believe.
It's political threats, but it is also physical threats. There are now people who were secretaries of state, even Republican secretaries of state, who've had their lives threatened and are being replaced because they won't toe the line and lie, which they know is a lie, to say the big lie that this election was stolen. And a large majority of Republicans believe an election that may have been the safest election in American history.
Tell us about it. I mean, never did we have more people voting. Never was it tested as much. As a sometimes elections professional myself, I cannot believe we're not talking about what an excellent election was run a year, 2 years ago in November. The Freedom to Vote Act, what will it take to pass this, since all of the Republicans seemingly are taking a powder? Are they? And yeah, let's start on that.
Well, first of all the Democrats are supporting the Freedom to Vote Act. And there's one Republican, Senator Murkowski.
God bless her.
But to pass a bill in the Senate, there are arcane rules that came out of the suppression of voting rights and civil rights historically. And the arcane rules demand that 2/3 of the Senate are needed to cut off debate. And so that's the filibuster. So you would need 60 votes. And right now we have, on this razor's edge, we have 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans, and you get 51 for a majority if the vice president, who this time, thank goodness, Kamala Harris is a Democrat. And so we could get 51 votes. We can get a majority, but you can't get 60 votes because the Republican Party is unified with just the barest number against civil rights, voting rights, women's rights, healthcare, child nutrition, child tax credit, cutting child poverty in half. All of those issues will not get one Republican vote. But we do have Democratic majorities. I partly mention it because a lot's been focused on how Democrats might have disagreements amongst themselves, when in fact, there is overwhelming unity on the Democratic side. And we should look at who the real enemies are. The real enemies are this MAGA faction who've gone along with the big lie and their corporate backers.
It is beyond my understanding how people who actually managed to get themselves elected to office are so afraid of a bunch of hooligans, basically, like that. beyond me. Michael, I know you have a question. Go for it.
Let me ask in relation to that, though. We were talking about the Cheneys, and Liz Cheney has her politics are still very conservative, but she's been pretty heroic in defending democracy. And I'm just wondering, with her dad showing up at Capitol yesterday, what do you think her chances will be to get reelected in Wyoming? I mean, how deep does this thing go? Do we have any sense of that?
I don't have a sense of it right now. But one of the prime things we need to do is, in addition to passing the legislation we need that meets the needs for people's lives, particularly in the Senate, because these wonderful investments have already passed in the House. In addition to passing that legislation, in addition to passing the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Act, which Senator Manchin does support, and all the Democrats are unified on, we also have to make sure that in the upcoming election that we build Democratic majorities and progressive majorities, and that we need to defeat any members of Congress and any members of the Senate who supported the insurrection.
So that's 147 of them, right?
So this is a violation of fundamentals of democracy.
If we defeat them all, we'll have a real big majority. Let me ask you, Heather, about your sense of the prospects of the Democrats the election prospects for Democrats in 2022. The tone of the media is, and based on history, is that chances are we lose the majority. I'm not so sure that's true. What can we do to prevent that? And I often think about your own experience, and a lot of us were close to this when people went to Mississippi in the 60s around voting rights. I start thinking about movement-esque organizing, all starting right now through the summer leading up to 2022, where people go places and do organizing and talk to people and take the hit and give it back, and discuss things. I'm not sure if that's possible or just an old guy's dream. What's your sense of that and of 2022's prospects?
Michael, I always think the answer to not enough democracy is that we need more democracy and we need more organizing. In fact, as some of you know, in the Biden campaign, I was the progressive outreach director. I directed progressive and seniors outreach in the Biden campaign. And in my core, we had thousands of volunteers in my unit, but in the core of my unit, I made up 2 buttons for the people who were working basically 24/7 as volunteers. And one button, and they were my watchwords that we ended every meeting. And one button says, organize. And the other button says, love at the center. So those are my 2 watchwords, and they're always my answer. So Michael, there are some abiding truths. There are new skills and techniques we can learn. There's new creativity from young people who are coming up. And there's some older verities, and organizing is one of them. I think it's, before the last election, if you go back to the beginning of when the last election was starting, the general assumption was that Trump was going to win, that the Democrats were divided, that we were going to fight with each other at the convention, would have a circular firing squad, and Trump was going to win.
Right.
And we turned it around because we turned out with over 7 million, maybe 8 million more votes for Joe Biden than for Donald Trump. And we did it because we organized. So if we organize, we can change the world. There are a number of signs that are quite hopeful, but it all depends on what we do. One is that on the Senate side, there are 6 states that are particularly in contest. 4 of them are
Come on,
held currently by
tell us where we got to move, Heather. Tell us where we got to move.
Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and New Hampshire, and then Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Those are the key states.
Yeah.
There are others too, North Carolina. There are many others that are very important. But these ones, it looks like we have a real chance, partly because we have excellent candidates and the Republicans are fighting amongst themselves because will they have a MAGA faction candidate who's just loyal to Donald Trump and has even lied about the election?
Right.
And will our people come out? So the Senate may be looking better than people had thought. The House, there's a similar story. Again, they've got some cuckoo candidates coming up and people who are even under injunctions and exposés about brutality to their spouse.
Right.
Who knows what?
Cuckoo candidates indeed.
Oh, what was it, Katie?
I said cuckoo candidates indeed.
They're also the gerrymandering, which they've done and really took to a supreme level.
Right.
It turns out that on balance, it may not be a Republican wipeout on it. It may, in fact, be a slight Democratic majority for the redistricting on the gerrymandering. It's not clear yet. It's not easy. They have violated the laws. There are places where there should be an overwhelming Democratic percentage or a high Democratic percentage, and they have disrespected that and really violated. But the laws have been changed and they've stacked the Supreme Court, so we don't have the support there. But it all depends on what we do. And Michael, the last thing I'd say is back when you say about Mississippi, as you know, I was in Mississippi in 1964. I was 18 years old. And at a time when people had thought, is there any way to live with the horrors and the abuse and the near impossible situations of people being killed and murdered? And it seemed like maybe no one in authority would care. But in fact, the country responded. And with that response, within a year, we had a Voting Rights Act. We're not where we want to be. We're not where we should be, but we're not where we were.
On that note, let's take a brief break for everybody to get their whistle or whatever they need to do. We'll be right back with our wonderful guest, Heather Booth. Come, stay right where you are. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with Heather Booth, who is firing us up for 2022, which is here. We're in it. We're going. All right, your life is in a movie somehow, and you were going to go to Sundance. Tell us what's going on with you and film at the moment, if you want to catch us up.
You know, the last time I was on your show, it was because we were showing in Chicago.
Yes.
The film on my life in organizing, which is called Heather Booth, Changing the World, which was on PBS and World Channel and shown in several hundred places around the country. By the way, you can get that film, which really is designed to inspire people to organize with love at the center. And that film you can get on the website, www.heatherbooththefilm.com. But there's another film that's come out about that's called The Janes. It's a documentary, and there was an underground abortion service that I created in 1965 when a friend of mine was pregnant, nearly suicidal, not ready to have a child, and asked, could I help find someone to provide an abortion. It's when 3 people talking about abortion was a conspiracy to commit a felony. And over time, that service developed into one where the women themselves who were involved in providing this service, they learned how to perform the procedure and performed over 11,000 abortions. That group was called Jane. There's a documentary about it called The Janes, and HBO is backing it. And it is going to be shown at Sundance. There's also another film that's a Hollywood-made film with Sigourney Weaver. That's a fictionalized version of the story, and that's called Ask for Jane. Both are being shown at Sundance. Now, HBO is going to fly me out to Sundance in person, but because of the COVID surge, it's all going virtual. But it will still be available virtually, and then will be available in theaters.
I have a question, Heather. The documentary, The Janes, is that the same original documentary called? I thought it was just called Jane.
Yeah,
no, there was an earlier movie that I think Cartinquin did.
Yeah, I used it in my class, and then Katy and Mary Driscoll come in and talk about it.
Oh, Mary's in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was 19 and a new member of CWLU, I used to sit in the office answering phones and give out the Jane number. And that was in 1969.
Well, there was two things I wanted to say there. One, Katy, I don't know if you knew this, that Estelle Carroll, who used to run the Graphics Collective, has made an arrangement with the Chicago Historical Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in 2023, though it may even be 2024, they are going to have a major exhibit about women's liberation art, and also tell the story about CWLU and the Chicago women's liberation history. You might want to follow up with Estelle for a future program.
Yep, but I definitely will.
On the movie,
the Chicago Women's Liberation Union, all these initials, Chicago Women's Liberation Union.
Oh,
yes. Thanks so much, Michael. And to your question, so there was another film that I thought really was pretty terrific called Jane, and then An Abortion Story. And that was shown also on PBS, and there would be a fight every year. Should it be shown? Should it not be shown? Because of the controversial matter for some, though it's overwhelmingly popular. And as people who are listening in may know, right now, 1 in 4 people with reproductive age, 1 in 4 will have an abortion. So if you just think of who's that involved, you count 1, 2, 3, 4 people, one of them is likely to have had or will have an abortion. So this is something we have to make sure is kept safe and legal and accessible. But this is a new movie, and Judith Arcana, who was one of the people involved in Jane, she and her son, Daniel Arcana, and Emma Pildis have been major forces behind it. Also, I think the main, not sure if it's director or producer for the film, is Tia Leeson, who is Michael Moore's producer, was Michael Moore's producer for his films. So it's, I haven't seen it, but I imagine it's quite a terrific film.
We totally approve of you being a Tinseltown rep for us. All right, before we run out of time, I'm going to ask, you did mention you currently have COVID. COVID has a way of slicing through the non-essentials, and it's still messing with our ability to live our lives as we speak. What is frustrating you most about the ramifications of COVID in our lives now? And what has been a gift of the pandemic, if you see any?
Well, the great tragedy are the people who are getting infected, having severe illness, and the numbers who have died, the numbers who've lost work, the numbers who aren't able to be at school or be with their loved ones. My son, the wonderful Gene Booth, is a Chicago teacher. And as you know, the teachers union decided it wasn't safe to return. And Lori Lightfoot, the mayor, in a offensive move, decided to go to war with the teachers rather than see them as the front line of engagement with our children.
It's incredible.
And so the teachers are not at work, can't even access virtual learning. So that the number of things that we've lost, the human connection, the lives, that's a great tragedy. And also the fear and the lies and disinformation. And it further exposes the inequalities of a healthcare system, where those often with the least voice and representation in the society, communities of color, especially poor communities, frontline workers, are the most impacted. Of gifts in this period, one is actually that we learn how to connect by things like Zoom, like you're doing now. There's a training center that I had started called Midwest Academy, and we've always done it started in 1973. It's trained hundreds of thousands of organizers in all sorts of arenas. And when COVID hit, I wasn't sure we would survive. But the co-directors, Jay Travis, remarkable Chicago-based organizer, and Eric Zachary, the new co-directors, found ways to make it thrive, because you now can have people involved from all over. And in some ways, it lowers the costs and lowers expense, lowers time.
Right.
So it's not the intimacy that we also want to see.
I mean, for us, it's, we used to love driving down Lakeshore Drive, getting ready, talking about what we were going to do on the show, make sure our guests, of which you've been one of before, get to the studio, find us. We don't get to do that anymore, and we miss it. But on the other hand, we've had interviews with Beto O'Rourke from, El Paso, and we're doing you in DC. It really does open up a lot of opportunity.
Well, I think it's time for us to let you go, but
no, just one more. You got to ask her about what's the status and the hopes, the chances for Build Back Better. Your take on that, Heather.
Well, one of the most important things we need to do, and right after we deal with the issue of freedom to vote, which is now the priority, when the Senate comes back, by the way, freedom to vote will come up. Senator Schumer said he's at least bringing it up on Martin Luther King Day, January 17th. And the Senate will come back overall January 24th. At that point, we need to deliver for the American public. We have delivered this American Jobs Act. We have delivered an infrastructure proposal for bridges and roads and Wi-Fi and getting the lead out of pipes. And now there's a human infrastructure, Build Back Better. It is the potential to cut child poverty in half, to lower prescription drug prices against the greed of pharma, to provide for universal pre-K, and just to improve lives, to investment in climate, the most serious investment in climate to address climate change that we've seen in our lifetimes. And all of this to be paid for by making the wealthiest pay more of their fair share. So it's a remarkable bill, even in the version that is now likely to happen, that will be scaled down. The struggle for the whole thing continues, the struggle for immigration reform and a pathway to citizenship. All these issues, the struggles will continue, but even in a scaled down version of Build Back Better, it will be probably the most extraordinary investment in our lifetime since the Great Society or since the New Deal. And it's something we all need to work for, to show we can make a government work for us and that we can deliver for the American people when we organize with love at the center.
Right on. I got to get some of those buttons.
All right. Well, we're going to thank Heather Booth and wish her very, very well. We didn't get to talk about being a grandmother, but next time. I'm sure you love it. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get pictures. I feel we're going to get pictures. Oh,
Look at all those
cuteness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good work. All right, we got Aaron Hughes in the waiting room, so we're going to kiss you goodbye. Mwah. Thank you so much for everything, for all you do, continue to do. Please take care of yourself and let others help you take care of yourself. If I was nearby, I'd bring you some banana bread. Anyway, love you very much.
Love you both. Maybe I'll see you
Onward.
April 14th when for Mayor Washington's birthday.
That'd be
Right on.
great. Bye-bye, hon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you both. Thank you.
Listeners and viewers, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of January 8th. And we're really happy to bring on an old friend, someone I met when he was real active with the Iraq Veterans Against the War, Aaron Hughes, who has been doing some serious organizing along with being a father and doing his artwork. He's going to tell us a little bit about a program coming up in an hour after our show ends at DePaul. So good morning to you, Aaron. Tell us how you are and what's up.
Mike, thank you so much for having me in. Katy, thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all your work. And yeah, I'm excited to tell everybody about this program that's happening in a little bit called Reparations Now and Onwards, Voices of Survivors, Advocates, and Next Steps. And I'm really humbled that it's a program that's going to feature both survivors of Chicago police torture and survivors of Guantanamo torture. And for the last number of years, I've been doing a lot of work around the relationship between the global war on terror and policing here in Chicago. And an exhibition at the Paul Art Museum that opens in March will explore the relationship between torture in Guantanamo and torture here in Chicago. And this panel is not just focused on the torture side of it, but the struggle for justice and reparations and the amazing legacy of reparations here in this city and how that can be something that other movements for justice can build from and learn from, and something that people that have survived Guantanamo are starting to think about. And so the program, you can learn more about the program at the Paul Art Museum's website. And it's just on the upcoming events. And you just register there. It's online on Zoom.
That's great. How did you get hooked up with DePaul? I know you're at the Art Institute as we speak, and you work there, right?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be a full-time visiting artist in the print media department here at the School of the Art Institute. And
terrific.
I'm a part of the Just Seeds Artist Cooperative, and we've been making political art and graphics with the movement. And I'm glad to be able to bring that kind of vision here to the school. And I got connected with DePaul from the last director there, Julie Rodriguez Winholm, who organized an exhibition with Eric Garcia, another veteran. He did an amazing exhibition there, and I was kind of help coordinating around some of that. And we'd stayed in touch, and now I'm working with Laura Caroline, the new director, on this new exhibition. It's been really exciting. And, I'm grateful for a local Chicago art institution be focused on bringing so much justice focused art to the Chicago community and really focused on Chicago projects. And I know that museum really focuses on that. And they've been so supportive in bringing this exhibition that's touching on some really tough issues. It's going to feature, new research from the Invisible Institute, new research from the Northwestern School of Journalism about these interconnections between policing and our wars abroad.
Wow.
Do you have our pal Flint Taylor coming in? Is he involved with this project at all?
He's not involved with this specific project, but he's in the orbit, I would say.
I'm sure.
Well, he's always been our go-to guy about torture. Now we'll go to you too.
I definitely, for me, like really the last year has just been such an amazing learning experience, because for the first time, we've been able to have a lot of access to survivors of Guantanamo. So Amber Ginsberg, my collaborator on the exhibition and on the Tea Project, which is kind of the basis of the exhibition, we've been interviewing torture survivors. And it's been humbling to hear how Guantanamo torture survivors and Chicago police torture survivors literally echo each other, both in their experiences, but then also in their visions of justice and their visions of reparations and their needs around healing, their needs around job security, their needs around family support, which is, I think, unfortunately, there's often a lot of disconnect between the international and local struggles. And it's really been powerful to hear and create space for those struggles to come together.
Aaron, remind me of the name of the Chicago guy who was called down to Guantanamo. He was a cop to help.
Yeah, so Richard Zuley was a Chicago police officer. He was also a lieutenant in the Navy Reserves, and he went down to Guantanamo underneath General Miller, and he had already been involved with a number of torture cases here in Chicago, forced confession cases that was brought forward by Spencer Ackerman, did an amazing article about him. And he went down to Guantanamo underneath General Miller and brought his torture techniques there. And then, General Miller went to Abu Ghraib and oversaw Abu Ghraib. So when people talk about General Miller saying, we need to Gitmoize Abu Ghraib, what he really meant is that we need to bring the Chicago torture techniques to Abu Ghraib, which in some ways were inherited through John Burge and his experiences in Vietnam. And so really, there's this deep legacy, and there's these actors that are the same actors that are a part of perpetuating state violence, and bringing that forward while also lifting up the similarities of the art, the struggle, the movement work that people do, and how connected it is. It's been really humbling to see all those interconnections, and to create a space through this exhibition and through this program later today, to highlight those connections, because that's like where these moments of intimate solidarity really emerge. And I think that's what's really powerful and creates new opportunities for change and movement work.
Wow, what an ignominious connection for us Chicagoans to have, all the way to Abu Ghraib and back. It's terrible.
It's painful. And unfortunately, all these things are still active right now, all these operations. And our program coincides with the 20th anniversary of the establishment of Guantanamo as an extra-legal prison and torture facility. So 20 years and people are still extra legally imprisoned there, cleared for release and everything, and still there. And
it's shameful.
It's, painful. Yesterday, Mozambique, a survivor of Guantanamo, was telling me about one of the individuals that's still there and his 19-year-old son that he's never met, and how the 19-year-old son was just hoping to see his father. And, those are the same, that kind of need for family connection that
everyone has.
And it's so devastated, and through policies that are just fraught and have nothing to do with justice, Okay. And so hopefully this is one more step in bringing it close to Guantanamo and securing justice and winning reparations, really, for all those that deserve it.
So one more time, Aaron, will you tell us about the event this afternoon that starts at 11 and goes till 1, and how people find their way to get on the Zoom link and take part?
Yeah, so Reparations Now and Onwards, Voices of Survivors, Advocates, and Next Steps. It's going to be moderated by the amazing attorney Joey Mogul from the People's Law Office, and it will feature Mansour Adaifi, a Guantanamo torture survivor, Kilroy Watkins, a Chicago police torture survivor, and Aislinn Pulley, the amazing organizer at the Chicago Torture Justice Center and one of the founders of Black Lives Matter here in Chicago. And You can find out more information about that on the DePaul Art Museum website under the upcoming events, public events. Mm-hmm. And there's a link to register right there on the page.
That's great. That's beautiful.
Well, you're doing real good in the world, brother. We really thank you for all your work, and we'll look forward to having you back on with more information.
I appreciate that, and I hope people can join us later today and then come out to the show when it opens in March.
We'll definitely have you back for the March part.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for all your work.
And blessings. Thanks so much for your time today, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Well, I've been watching a little bit of TV, and I got to say that both the University of Illinois team and the Chicago Bulls have been really fun to watch and amazing, and they're both doing really well. As for the Bears, it seems like getting a little bit better. We got one more game coming up tomorrow, and who knows if we'll have a new coach. There's talk about Harbaugh leaving Michigan and coming to Chicago, where he once was a quarterback. And I have nothing new to report on the struggle between the owners and the players in the baseball world. I do love baseball, and I'm hoping for a great White Sox team, Cubs too, and we'll see if that comes to be. In memoriam, we'd like to call your attention. Just yesterday, Sidney Poitier passed at the age of 94. He was from Bahamas, the first actor to get the Best Actors Award, first African-American or African descent person to get the Best Actor Award. And I'll always remember him handcuffed to Tony Curtis as two prisoners escaping and having to not like each other, but work together. Back in 1958, we saw that. And did you have another memoriam, Katy?
Well, we had a local denizen of Glenwood Avenue pass this week, rather surprisedly, Susan Tectiel, who was a regular visitor to the Heartland as long as we were there. Also, she was a very regular no exit person. And she's younger than me, so it was not a happy surprise that she passed, but we thank her for her neighborly self. She was a real neighborhood gal. We're going to close with Joan Baez because she got ripped off last week. And we're going to play the whole song this time because for over 25 years, we've been bringing you live from the Heartland, now called Heartland at Home, which is broadcast every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Chicago's WLUW 88.7 FM, also streaming live from WLUW.org. It's also archived on our channel at youtube.com/Heartland Media and now on Spotify and Google Podcasts. Type in Live from the Heartland. It is also cablecast all week long on CAN TV, channel 27. We thank our Live from the Heartland team, Lynn Orman-Weiss, Luis Mejia Aarons, and the great folks at WLUW, including the podcast director, Gwen Brown. We ask you, do good in the world.
The world needs all the good that we do.
All power to the people.